Well, friends, it's episode 3 of Barr+Friends with my Pastor Stephen Paramala, future author, pastors one of the greatest churches in America, husband to one woman.
Only one. Only one.
Just had a baby, that was 6 months ago now,
9.
right?
Yeah, she's 9 months old. It's crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Crazy.
Time flies, man.
Really does, man.
Yeah.
Pastor Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's an honor to be here. It's been a long time coming, right?
It has been.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming. I know you're busy, being, pastor, church planter. So I know it's
And then father of 3 kids.
Yeah, man.
Husband
Yeah.
to 1 wife. Yeah. Busy life.
busy life, man. But now, how you doing? You've been good?
Yeah, been doing good. Yeah. Just living life to the fullest. I feel like nowadays I'm just an Uber driver trying to get my kids to everything they need to go to
Yeah.
and all of that. But yeah, doing well.
Good,
Doing
man.
well.
Good,
Life
good.
is good.
I know you just got over. I know I can cut this off, but I know you just got over COVID.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
But not only COVID, but pink eye as well. So that's a lethal
Wow.
combination. It was rough. It hit me really hard too. It wasn't one of those asymptomatic COVIDs. I was out for about 6 days. It was tough. So I'm glad I'm have that behind me, and I'm good. I'm good.
Whew, man. Good. Well, Pastor, let's get right into it.
Okay.
Man. 6 years. So first of all, let me finish my intro. So my pastor, he's not only my pastor, but he's my mentor, my brother, my friend. I've known Pastor Stephen for, 6 years. I think it's going on 7.
Crazy. Wow.
Yeah. Crazy how time flies.
Yeah.
And, my mentor, he's taught me a lot. I actually texted you a couple of days ago, or I think a week ago now, just thanking you for your mentorship and how much you've, been a very impactful influence in my life. And man, I'm just happy that you're here. I'm happy that we can be able to do this. And man, I just don't know where to start.
Well, I'll say thank you for that text as well, because a lot of times you don't hear that thank you from people, and we don't do it for the thank yous, but it is nice to know that that you've made an impact in someone's life. And so it's been an honor, to walk with you the last 6 years and to see your growth and to see how far you've come and to see how much God has done in your life over the last 6 years. So I do really appreciate you sending that text, man. It means a lot.
Yeah, no, I was listening to a podcast, and the podcast was just saying that, you should be able to, hit up your pastor, your leader, and just let them know how much, you mean to them and to thank them, and like you said, like sometimes, because, you've been doing this for a long time, that you don't really get a lot of thank yous. And like you said, you're not doing it for the thank yous, but just the thought of just, hey, Pastor, thank you for this, thank you for that, thank you for being there for me. Just thank you for just, being you, know.
Absolutely.
And so, I just think that, sometimes we just have to, just show honor or give honor, where it's due.
And to be honest, we're already getting real.
Man, 2 minutes.
I know. We live in a culture where we don't honor our leaders.
Right.
We don't honor people. We live in a culture that dishonors authority, dishonors leadership, and a lot of it, if I'm being honest, leadership brings on itself by the way we act, by the way we treat people, by the things that we say, but then we do, and it doesn't line up. But there are really there are godly, integral leaders, and I think it is important to honor those leaders. I know I practice honoring the leaders in my life because they pay so much of a price, and I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing if there weren't leaders that went before me. And so I do think it's important to honor them and to verbalize how much they've done for you, and express that gratitude. And so I think it's something that we need to bring back in our culture.
Absolutely. I try to bring that back, because I understand. I mean, going to church, being a church kid all my life, I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly. And, it's just sad, that, the people that serve your church, they don't take the time. I mean, yeah, you have people that will tithe, that will attend faithfully to your church, but it'll be good for those people to also say, hey, thank you. Thank you for walking with me through the darkest times of my life, or thank you for helping me and my wife through our marriage, just stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, for sure. So Pastor, I want to go back to the beginning of your life. Can you just give us a little bit of background on, first of all, like, not who you are, not who you are now, but little Stephen, little Pastor, because I know that you're Indian.
Yep.
You and your family came from India. I don't know when.
Yeah. My parents immigrated from India to America 42 years ago, and I was actually born in America. My sister and I were both born in America, but my parents they got married in India and then moved to America, and they've been living in Kansas City, Missouri ever since, and that's where I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. So, yeah, that's hence the KC hat for those that are watching. Yeah, big Chiefs fan.
Big Chiefs fan. Yeah, man. Yeah. Mahomes did it again. I think this is his second
Super Bowl.
Wow, crazy. Okay, so 42 years ago, your parents, your sister, yourself, you guys came from India to America, Kansas City. How was growing up like?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in so we lived in Kansas City for 4 years. Right. And then my parents, it was kind of not the best area and not the best schools and all that. So they moved to a suburb of Kansas City called Raytown. And so that's where my sister, who's 3 years younger than me, we both grew up in Raytown, Missouri. And so it was interesting growing up in a Midwest area town. There wasn't a lot of diversity like we have here in New York City.
Right.
You have every tribe, every tongue, every color, every background here in New York. And you're constantly around people that are different than you. But growing up in Raytown, it wasn't so much like that. And so I as an Indian growing up in Raytown, I never felt like I fit into a group.
Right.
I was the only Indian in elementary school, middle school, and then there was one other Indian in my high school. There was no Indians in my church, no Indians in my neighborhood.
Wow.
And so I kind of felt like I never fit into any one group. And so I think that created an insecurity in me and a longing to belong and a longing to fit in, which ended up later on in life, my teenage years, getting me into a lot of trouble. But yeah, I mean, I think like my parents, they were loving, they were good. I mean, I had friends in the neighborhood and all that, but did get made fun of for being Indian a lot, and that created even more of an insecurity and a void and a longing to belong. And so, yeah, I think along those aspects, it was tough, and I think growing up in church, I also got made fun of in church, with the kids in kids church, and then when we got into youth group, got made fun of for being an Indian, and so it created a wall and a wedge, and I didn't want to connect in church, and so I didn't. I mean, I went to church on Sundays, but I never connected because I never felt like I belonged, and I never had that community with the other teenagers in church and things like that. And so so I found community with a group of friends that weren't living life in the best ways, and so I followed suit, and I started getting into things that weren't godly and weren't Christ-like, and I was just getting further and further away from church and the Christianity that I grew up with.
Now, you never went to jail, though, right? You don't have no background record.
So I did go to like a overnight holding cell.
Right.
Once,
Okay.
me and my friends, one of the things that we did where we would go and park our car somewhere, and then we would go and check any cars that had doors unlocked, and if they had money or cigarettes, or we would also steal. That back in those days, you still have them, but those
Right.
portable radios.
Radios,
and so
yeah.
You just take a couple screwdrivers and pop them out. So we would do that. And so one time we ended up getting pulled over, and then we had a bunch of belongings of other people's. And so I was in a holding cell overnight, but I never went to jail. Yeah. Thank God.
Thank God, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
Only His grace.
So, with that behavior, your parents sent you to boarding school.
Yeah. Yeah.
How was that experience?
Yeah. It was March 10th, actually.
You know the date.
March 10th, 1999, so 24 years ago.
Wow.
I do know the date. I was an out-of-control teenager, was getting in trouble with the law, was partying. I was suspended from school, was failing in school, and just completely out of control. And my parents were at the end of their rope. They didn't know what to do. They were praying for me. They were trying to do their best, but I was just so hard-hearted and rebellious that I was just headed towards a trajectory of jail or death or just complete terrible life. And so my parents found out about this Christian boarding school in Northeast Missouri that was 3.5 hours away. Mm-hmm. And so they actually had found out about it several months before I actually went. And so they told me that they were going to send me there. And I said, I will run away from home before you send me away to some boarding school. And so,
wow.
I threatened to run away because I was like, I'm not getting sent anywhere. This is crazy. I want to stay here. But what happened is that I had a car, and we were one night, me and my friends, we were bored, and so we decided to. This is so stupid and embarrassing, but I'll just share it. But we thought we would go into a gas station and steal a rack of lighters. And try to sell them for money for weed. It was just dumb. So I was parked a little bit of ways, and then my friend went into the gas station, grabbed the rack of lighters, and then ran out of the gas station and was running to the car where there was this woman in a car that I think she thought we robbed the gas station because she starts following. He gets in the car and we take off, and this lady starts following us. And I'm going like 70 in a 45 mile per hour street. She was following us, just zigging and zagging with me. And so I know she was just following us because some lighters were stolen. And so
right.
I ended up, I was going really fast, and there was this bowling alley and a parking lot. And on the other side was another road. So I was going to try to bust a U-turn and go back down to lose this woman. And so when I was 16 years old, and when I turned my car, I was going so fast, I slid into a curb, just completely shattered the axle and the wheel of my car and all that. And so my parents were like, that's it. You're not gonna you're gonna have to pay for your own car, and until then you can't drive. You can't. We're not gonna fix it. And so I needed money to fix this car, and. Mm-hmm. And then I also had a drug deal gone wrong, so I owed someone else some money. And so I ended up coming up with this plan, this scheme to rob my best friend's house.
Yes. Okay.
And so he was my childhood best friend. Because of the lifestyle I was living, we had grown apart, but I knew the code to his garage door.
Right.
That's how close we were. And so so me and another guy, we ended up I ended up leaving school early, meeting up with him. We went to the house, and I kicked in the basement window to make it look like I went through the basement, and then went through the garage, and we robbed his house. And so to make a long story short, I ended up getting caught. And so I didn't know what life was going to look like at that point. And so I owed people money. My car was wrecked. I was suspended from school. Just the bottom of my life, and I was just so. I didn't know what I was just like. I've just created such a shamble of my life. And so it was at that moment, actually, and so got caught robbing my friend's house, and I had a meeting at the juvenile detention center with a bunch of other officers. And so at this point, I was still denying that I had done this. And so it was me, my mom, and my dad, and I think 6 police officers. And so I was still denying it. And then detail by detail, the cops started revealing what I had done. And so maybe the other guy, I still don't know what happened. The other guy ended up snitching or what, right. But they knew everything that I had done. And so as the cops were revealing step by step what I had done, my dad started weeping. He started just crying and wailing because he was just thinking, man, I immigrated here from India to give my son a better life, and this is the life he's chosen. And so I had only seen my dad cry one other time, and that was when we were in India at his mother's memorial service. And so I started weeping, and the officers actually said, hey, I'll give your family a minute. And they left the room, and we were just crying. And I just said, you know what? I can't live like this anymore. I can't do this to my parents anymore. I can't do this to myself anymore. So I told my parents right then that I would go to the boarding school. And so that's when I ended up going to a boarding school called Heartland in Northeast Missouri. And so it was a Christian boarding school, and that's where I surrendered my life fully to Jesus. And so although I was pulled out of my family and my house at 16 years old, I'm eternally grateful that I went to that boarding school, because I needed to be taken out of the environment that I was in. I needed to be put into a completely different place with different routines, with different people. I needed different influences. And so we were going to church 5 times a week, so I was hearing the gospel every day. And so finally my the hard heart broke down, and I surrendered my life to Christ. And about a month later, we had a guest preacher that was speaking at Heartland. That's what the ministry boarding school is called, but it was also a church. And so he was speaking at the church, and then he did an altar call at the end, and whoever wanted prayer came up, and I went up, and he laid hands on me, and he said that I was going to be a preacher. And it was in that moment that I felt called into the ministry. There was something that bore witness with what that man said, and that's when I felt called to be a preacher and felt called to ministry. And I was 17 at that time, and so in a matter of a couple months, I gave my life to Jesus, completely transformed my heart, and then I felt called into the ministry. And I was so hungry for God. At that time, I devoured the New Testament, just could not put it down, and just was so spiritually hungry and just wanted more of God. And I've been committed to Him and serving Him and surrendered to Him ever since. And I'm so grateful that He forgave me of my sin and changed my life and called me into the ministry. And ministry is all I've wanted to do since I was 17 years old.
Wow. I mean, I've heard you say that story before, but man.
Yeah, kind of one-on-one. It's a lot more intimate. It hits differently.
Right. I was just going to say that. I'm like,
it
whoa.
feels more vulnerable and transparent. Yeah.
Whew. Wow. When the officers gave you guys a moment in that room and you saw your parents crying, did it hit you differently? Like seeing your family, your dad weeping, did it move you in a different way?
It broke my heart because I'd only seen my dad cry one other time, and it was when I was 8 years old. And so I was 16.
Right.
And so to see my grown man,
right,
just break down weeping because of my decisions and choices. I had brought that man to tears, a man that I loved so dearly, a man that never did anything wrong to me. Wow. I brought him to tears because of my stupid choices. And so it it completely broke my heart. I was broken in that moment. I mean, it wasn't like I was broken for my sins because I wasn't even there with Jesus at that point in my life. It was that I had broken my father's heart, and my mom, she had a mother's intuition, so she knew I had done it, but my dad kept defending me, even to my mom, saying he's saying he didn't do it when I was denying that I had done this.
Right.
He's saying he didn't do it. I believe him. And so then that made me feel even worse that my dad was defending me, this thing that I had done. And so, yeah, I was completely broken in that moment, in that room. I just felt so horrible for the choices I had made and the decisions and what I had put my parents through. Yeah, just totally felt so terrible.
I mean, I guess you would want to change, especially seeing your mom and your dad, they're like, man, especially seeing your father crying.
Oh yeah,
man, yeah. So boarding school, God met you in a powerful way.
Yeah. And
do you know the guy's name that prophesied over you?
Yeah, his name is Mike Lindquist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was a pastor in South Texas at the time. He traveled and preached.
Oh, wow.
He regularly came to Heartland, but that was the first time I had seen him because that was right after a few months after I'd gotten there.
Wow. Yeah. Isn't it crazy how God can take the lowest place of your life and just put you in a boarding school, and God just met you in a phenomenal way. And when he put his hand on you, the speaker, the preacher, what was the feeling when he said to you, you're going to be a preacher? I know that you said that your spirit, it witnessed something inside of you. What was that feeling?
Yeah. So just a little background. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. And so we were the theological term is we were cessationists. So we didn't believe in the gifts of the Spirit. We believed that the gifts of the Spirit ceased once the last apostle died. And so there were no prophetic words and miracles and tongues and interpretation of tongues and all of those things. And so this boarding school happened to be a spirit-filled, charismatic Pentecostal sort of that vein.
Right.
And so actually when he laid hands on me and prayed for me, I fell out. We call that slain in the spirit. So he prayed and said, you're going to be a preacher. And then I fell backwards, and I was kind of, I could still think and all that, but I was on my back, and I was just I was just like, wow, what does that mean? And a preacher, I'd never even imagined being a preacher or pastor or evangelist or in the ministry. And so I was just like, I feel something, and I feel like a connection to it, but I don't really know what that even means for me. What does that mean tomorrow? I'm still in high school, that kind of thing. And so that's where I started talking to my youth pastor and really pursuing him as a mentor. And he kind of helped me flesh that out. He gave me opportunities to preach in my youth group and challenged me and discipled me. And he gave me my youth pastor, Eric Kipke, R.I.P. He's no longer with us, but he gave me opportunities to speak in my youth group when I was 17, 18 years old, and I preached my first sermon, under his leadership, and he just said, I want you to preach, and then he just kept giving me opportunities and different things like that, and then I told him I felt called to evangelism, and so he commissioned me to start going out every other Wednesday. So I would skip youth group and I would go out on the streets with a team. I was starting to develop a team, and we'd go out and pass out tracts, is what you call them, and witness to people and share your faith out on the streets. And so he really empowered me and really believed in me and helped kind of stir up those gifts and all of that. So yeah.
So you had someone that believed in you, that they just gave you a shot. They gave you a chance to just grow and flourish into what God called you to be. That's so cool. So cool. So cool. All right. So after boarding school, you went back to Texas, right? Or you were still in Texas?
I'd never lived in Texas at the time. The boarding school was in Northeast Missouri.
Northeast Missouri.
Yeah.
Okay. So, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Texas isn't even part of the story yet.
Oh, you're still in Missouri?
Because I'm still in high school at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you finished high school.
Yeah, and that's a testimony in and of itself. I had gotten suspended so much in high school for different things, just stupid things, that by the end of my junior year, I only had 5.5 credits, and you're supposed to have 21 credits.
Right.
And so I get to Heartland, 3/4 of a way through my junior year, and I only have 5.5 credits, and so I was about to get my GED, and I had the application filled out and everything, and at the graduation ceremony of the class before me, which that was the year I was supposed to graduate, but I didn't have enough credits. Something inside of me said, you need to finish what you started. I do not want you to quit. I want you to graduate high school. And I wanted to graduate, and so there was just something that rose up in me, and so I ended up going to high school 5 years, taking 9 classes my 5th year of high school, but I ended up graduating from high school instead of getting my GED. So I may have never,
Pastor,
never
you never even shared this.
Yeah, no, I haven't shared that with many people. And so I went to high school for 5 years and graduated in Heartland. And so I think me finishing what I started set a precedent in my life, and so it's a core value of mine to finish what I start, and so I make it a point to I can't say I finish every book I start, but I do finish most of the books that I start.
Right.
And it's just it's a core value now to finish what I started, and I think it started when I decided to finish high school, even though I had to go another year, and it gave me eligibility to play basketball another year in high school, which my basketball coach appreciated as well. So, yeah.
So finish what you start. I like that, Pastor. Wow. Okay. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Wow. So wait, your 5th year of high school, and how many credits or how many?
I had to take 9 classes. When
9
a lot
classes.
of people, they only had to take 4 classes or whatever, and they could be out half the day. I had to take 9. Yeah, so I took my full classes in person, and then I had to take some online classes after, in my own time as well. But I was committed to finishing. I was serious about it. So,
wow, that's what's up, man. Definitely.
Yep. Don't regret it either.
Wow. Well, amen to that. So, graduated from high school, college.
Yeah.
Did you did college for a little bit, right? Or
yeah.
no?
So, back to that guy that prophesied over me.
Yes.
He started a Bible school in South Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I graduated high school, I stayed on staff there at Heartland, and I worked with the other teenagers in the boys' home of the boarding school. So I worked and did that for a year, and served in our youth group and worked closely with our youth pastor. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I felt God calling me to Bible school, and so that's when I went to South Texas, and Mike Lindquist, he had started a school called World Center School of Ministry.
Right.
And so in August of 2002, moved to South Texas to start Bible school, and it was a 3-year program, and that's when I met this attractive Mexican girl, and her name was Priscilla Medrano.
Got it.
And so we were both in the same class. And so that's how I moved down to Texas. And so the school was in a city called Mission, Texas, and it's at the very south of Texas. You've been there.
Yes.
Very south, 10 minutes from the border of Mexico.
Yep.
It's in a place called the Valley. And so that's where I went to Bible school to train for ministry.
Wow, cool. And how many years were you there?
Yeah, I was there for
college?
3 years.
Okay.
And it was an incredible time of stretching and growing and learning. learned how to minister to people, learned the Bible, just such a great time of growing and learning.
Wow.
And then just doing practical ministry as well. So it was an incredible 3 years that we were there. Yeah.
Awesome, for sure. And then as you went to that, or as you were going to the Bible school or college, it's college now, right? Or is it just Bible school?
Bible school.
Just Bible school. Okay. That's when you and the wifey, you guys did a missions trip in New York, right?
Yeah. So
And
our
then-
second year
Okay.
in Bible school, we did a missions trip. So we had two options, one to Dearborn, Michigan, and one to New York City. And so I wanted to go to New York City, and so I chose that trip. And so me and Priscilla Madrano was her name at the time.
Right.
We both ended up on the group to New York City, and so we came here. We actually did we stay at Nisum? I don't know if we stayed at Nisum that time or not. I don't remember, but anyways, we spent a week here. It was 2003.
Okay.
We spent a week here, and we partnered with a few different ministries, did children's ministry. We preached on the subway train. We went to parks and did worship and preach. We just shared our faith with people in parks and all over the place. But during that week, I fell in love with New York City, and it drew me in, the energy, and I felt in my spirit that at some point I would be back in New York City, living in New York City and doing some sort of ministry. And then
she felt that way too.
Find out, Priscilla felt the same way. And so at the time we weren't dating or anything like that, but I did have feelings for her at the time, and so I was like, oh, well, that's cool. The woman I like, she also feels a calling to New York City. Maybe this is a sign or whatever. But yeah, so that's when, during that trip, is when the seeds for New York City were planted in my heart and in her heart, and it just never left us.
Wow, man, that's so amazing how God can talk to both of you guys separately.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you guys were dating, there was a time that you guys went to like a restaurant, or you guys prayed about like either getting together or being married. And you something about how you guys were like sharing scriptures. And the scripture that I think that she came up with is, wherever you go, I'll go.
Yeah. No, you're fast forwarding until after we're married, though.
Oh, this
was about us moving to New York City. So
wow,
we can move forward and talk about that if you want.
Man, no, because I mean,
because we're just in Bible school.
Y'all just in Bible school, okay?
We ended up graduating, and then I moved to San Antonio to be a part of a church planting team there. That the church we were a part of when we were in Bible school, they planted a church in San Antonio, and then Priscilla went to Ireland for 6 months to help with the church plant in Belfast, Northern Ireland.
Oh, wow!
And so we had feelings for one another,
right?
But we were both pursuing what God wanted us to do.
Okay.
And so we had actually started talking to one another, and we started like what I called an intentional friendship. And so we were continuing that friendship while she was ministering in Ireland and I was ministering in San Antonio. And after 6 months, Priscilla ended up moving to San Antonio, where I was, to help us with the church plant. And then a few months later, on Thanksgiving of, I don't know, 2000.
I don't know how you remember these dates, man.
On Thanksgiving, I ended up asking her to be my girlfriend. And so we started dating in San Antonio. And then we ended up getting married in August of 2008 in San Antonio. We were both there serving in that church. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because I thought all that happened. No, but that was before you guys even dated. Like, you knew who Pastor Priscilla was, but you guys didn't really date. You guys were just getting to know each other, or intentional friendship. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then she moved to San Antonio, and then we started dating.
Okay.
We dated for a little over a year, got engaged for 6 months, and then got married at the end of August.
Oh, wow. Y'all were quick. I went for 2. Wow, man. Wow. Cool. Now, so since we're already here, how did you know? How did you know that Pastor Priscilla was the one for you?
Yeah, I think I looked. Well, first of all, I was physically attracted to her. That
Right.
really matters.
That's important.
Yeah, and then I knew she was called into the ministry, and she loved Jesus and challenged me in how she loved Jesus and the commitment she had to Jesus. And so that was really attractive to me because I didn't want to have to pull someone along spiritually. I wanted someone that could walk by my side and
Preach.
someone that we could challenge each other with. And so I just fell in love with how much she loved Jesus, and she challenged me, and she's a strong leader, and all of those things. And so I think as I prayed, got to know her, I realized that she had such a beautiful character, and that she was called in a similar direction, not the exact same thing, but she was called in a similar direction as me. And I felt like her gifts could complement mine and that we could make a good team. And so that's kind of how I, felt that she was my wife. I will say at the end of our second year of Bible school, this is TMI, but I was in the restroom,
Okay.
going to the bathroom, and I had
All
my
right.
Bible, and I said, God, give me a sign that that Priscilla is the one or not. And so the scripture of Ephesians 5:28, I think it is. I don't know if I'm perfectly with the reference there, but I opened up my Bible while I was on the can, and it was husbands, love your wives the way Christ loved the church. Mm-hmm. And so for whatever reason, when I got on that scripture, I felt like God said that's going to be your wife. And so we weren't dating or anything yet. We hadn't even graduated from Bible school yet. And so that's kind of when I realized she was going to be my wife, but it wasn't until years later that we started dating and then got married. But
Wow.
But all of those things that I mentioned went into us coming together and me knowing that she was the one and that I was going to spend the rest of my life with her.
Wow.
Yeah.
On the can.
On the can.
Wow, man.
Face
Okay.
on the,
Oh man,
on
Pastor.
the bar.
Now, Pastor, you're strong-willed, and your wife, I love you, Pastor Priscilla, she's strong-willed
Yeah, she's
as well.
Latina.
Yeah, right? Got a little spice to her.
Yes.
Whew. And you guys been married for what? Going on
14 years. Yeah.
how? Because I know that there had been some challenging times.
Yeah.
Arguments, disagreements, et cetera, like how. Because you guys are both, just strong-willed and
Firstborn.
Firstborn.
Both firstborn, yeah.
And I know that you kind of mentioned this in your sermon, all the things, shameless plug. But how are you guys able to, I guess, manage, arguments, or how do you guys keep things neutral?
Yeah.
In a sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we don't shy away from telling young people that are in relationships,
Right.
that are thinking about marriage, that we do argue, and we do we have opinions, and we have desires, and we do go back and forth. We're not one of these couples that never fight. We do,
Right.
because we are both strong-willed. We're both firstborn. We're both leaders. We both want our way. And but I think the thing about it is when we argue and fight with each other, we always make it a point to come to a resolution. And I would have to thank my wife on that. We don't just simmer in our anger. We don't let the sun go down on our anger. I try, but she don't let me. She has to talk about it.
Right.
And so I think because we come to a resolution, I think that's why we don't harbor bitterness and animosity towards one another. And so we just hash it out and fight it out and argue. But at the end of the day, we know we love each other and we're committed for life to each other. And because we're secure in our relationship, we can do that tug of war, and then it takes a lot of humility and a lot of apologies and a lot of just working through those things and admitting when we're wrong and things like that. And so and the reality is that we fight over stupid stuff. Sometimes we're in the middle of a fight, we're angry at each other, we look at each other and we're like, this is so stupid. We're fighting because one of us left clothes out, or we're fighting over something small that just set us off that turned into something big. And the thing is, because we chose so well with each other, very rarely, if ever, do we ever fight over the really big things, over the things about our calling, where we're going to live, what we're going to do with our lives, the way we want to raise our children. We don't fight over the big things. It's more of the small things. And so that's another thing. Like when you're fighting over really big things, that's when you tend to start questioning your relationship and all of those things. And so that's when it gets difficult, when you're arguing about those really, really important things in life, and you can't just see eye to eye. So most of the time on the very big things, on the life-changing, life-altering things, we tend to kind of be on the same page.
Awesome. Like, I know that you guys have been in the marriage game for years now. Are there people that you go to? Like, do you and your wife go to therapy, go to counseling, or do you guys have people in your life that you guys go to do like weekly or monthly check-ins?
Yeah. We're 14, almost 15 years into it. So we've had different iterations because we've lived in different places. So like when we were in Arlington at the Grace Place, Youth and Young Adults Pastors, I went to my pastor a lot for marriage stuff, and she went to my pastor's wife a lot, and so that's what we did. Right now, we have done counseling, and that's been amazing. That's been great, and I have different pastors that I'll go to that are a little further along in their marriage than I am, that I'll ask for advice and things like that, and she has women, and so. Yeah, we do, and we listen to, we try to listen to podcasts on marriage, read books on marriage, things like that. I do think it's really, really important. But I will say, now that we have kids, I have a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, and a 9-month-old. Whenever we get around a couple that has older kids, we'll always pick their brains about how they raised kids, and then especially other pastors that they have kids that are adults and they're in the ministry, or they might not be in the ministry but they love the church still. We try to ask them what did they do in their parenting to keep their child loving Jesus and loving the ministry, because you hear so many heartbreaking stories about ministers whose kids just hate the church, don't want anything to do with God, and we don't want that. So yeah, I mean, I think we do have people that we go to and things like that, but there's always more that you can do. You can never invest enough in your marriage. That's the most important relationship outside of your relationship with Christ, and so there's never too much investing in that relationship, because that is top priority.
Right. And that's one thing that I appreciate and love about you and your wife, is that you guys ask questions. You guys, I would say this, are like the humblest people on the planet. Whoa. Because you guys are just like, no, like, I want to just get wisdom. I want to get advice. I want to learn how to do something. And I've literally seen you guys seek out advice, seek out wisdom. And I think that's so important, so essential, because I find myself doing that at my job or wherever I'm going. How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you edit that photo? Stuff like that. And so I think that is just so cool, because most leaders or most pastors, they take like the prideful approach. Like, I'm not going to ask them that. I'm not going to, humble myself, or I'm not going to, ask that question, or, get advice or glean from them because, who were they,
Yeah.
So I appreciate, you,
Thank you.
you and your wife doing that. Cause I mean, that's big for
Yeah.
sure. Okay. So marriage question. What, what has been the most impactful, I would say not impactful, but what has been the best advice that you've gotten on marriage?
Oh wow. Best advice I've
Yeah, that
gotten
you got
on marriage.
on marriage, yeah.
I think I don't even know who gave me this advice or if I heard it on a sermon or something like that. But it's as the husband, we have to. We're called to be the leaders of the home, the spiritual leaders of the home, and part of that is leading in humility and leading with saying sorry. And so, as hard as it is, as much as it hurts my pride and my ego, and as much as I don't want to do it, there's many, many, many times where we've been in an argument or we're mad at each other, and I've had to just say, I'm sorry. And I've had to initiate, and it's because, I'm the leader. And so I've got to, it's not just the perks of leadership. It's you got to lead in saying sorry and apologizing and humbling yourself. And you've got to lead the way in that. And so I think, I don't even remember who told me that or where I got that advice from, but I think it's so important that, that we lead in that area of apologizing and humbling ourselves, because somebody has to do it. If you're in a standstill, somebody has to take the first step. And I believe that as the leader of the home, it's my responsibility to do that the majority of the time, to lead the way for reconciliation and healing and resolution in the marriage relationship.
Wow. That's good. That's good. That's what's up. Going back to you working, I don't know if we even hit this yet, but going back to you serving at the Grace Place, Texas, I want to go back to when you and your wife had a conversation on, hey, let's go to NYC and let's plant a church. I want to go into that now. So how was that whole season of your life with that, trying to transition from South Texas to New York? Because I know that you and the wife were like, I know that God is calling me to New York years ago.
Yeah.
And now, you guys are in Texas and you're married.
Yeah.
And now the time has come to, I guess, make one of your dreams come true, which is plant a church in New York City. So how did that go?
Yeah. So we went to Bible school in South Texas in Mission,
Right.
graduated,
Right.
moved to San Antonio, lived there for 5 years, got married there and all that. And then got hired. And then in San Antonio, that seed of New York City was still there. And so me and Priscilla both, we led a missions trip to New York City when we were living in San Antonio. And so that kind of reinforced and reinvigorated that calling. And so then we, in 2009, we got hired as the youth and young adults pastor of the Grace Place. And early on, it was weird. Early on, when I got hired at the Grace Place, I felt like the Lord spoke to me and said, in 5 years, there's going to be a transition. And we'd just gotten hired. And I was like, why would God speak to me early on? It didn't make sense. And so it just stayed in my mind, though. And so around that 5-year mark, I started feeling something shifting in my heart and my spirit. And I thought that I was going to maybe move from youth and young adults pastor to executive pastor. I thought I was going to move up in our church. And but that never happened. That didn't end up happening. And so as me and my wife started praying about what God had for us, once that 5-year mark hit, we started feeling, the nudging of a possible church planting. And so I remember around that time, our church does a yearly, an annual missions conference. And so that year, my pastor had his son be the keynote speaker. And so it was on a Wednesday night. We had dinner and all of that stuff. And then he got up to speak, and he started sharing his story of how he had planted a church a few years later. And he talked about all that God had done. I don't remember. I think he was at 7 years at that time, and he was just talking about all that God had done. And Priscilla leaned over and whispered in my ear while he was talking, "Doesn't that make you want to plant a church?" And at that time, I said, "No way! I'm fine here. I'm good. I'm in a good place in my ministry here." And so, no, I don't want to. But as we started praying and thinking about what God had for us, it became clear that God wanted us to plant a church. And then when we thought about what city, New York City was the first city that came to both of our minds. And so that's when I approached Pastor Benson, my pastor, and said, "Hey, I feel called to plant a church in New York City." And so he said, "Let's do it." And so that's when we ended up planning to move here. But at the time that we had decided to move to New York, and we made the decision, you know what, God is calling us there, so we're going to start preparing to move. This was 2014. I was diagnosed with testicular cancer while we were in Texas, and so this was just such a punch to the gut that we had said yes to the Lord, and then I had testicular cancer, and I was like, "God, are you telling us not to go? What is this? Is this an attack from the enemy?" And so we made a decision that cancer was not going to dictate the timeline of God's calling. When God called us to New York, he knew this was going to happen. And so I ended up having surgery to remove the tumor, and I got the green light from the doctors to be able to move. And so in 2016, in July 5th, 2016, we packed up our bags.
Boston, you and these dates.
Boston was 4, Avia was 2. We packed up everything. We sold our house. We sold most of our stuff. And we hit the road, and we moved to New York City and moved into West Harlem, 525 West 146th Street, a place you've been to many times. And we moved in, and that's kind of how it happened.
Wow. And how has your church planting journey been going?
I mean, I think it's been the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life by far.
Man.
I mean, I think we moved here in July of 2015, and we waited for a year and a few months to actually launch our church, because we needed to get acclimated to the city. We didn't know anybody in New York City, so we needed to build a team to be able to launch. And then my wife's cousin and their family from Texas moved up, people that you know very well, Ticho and Michelle and their family. And so they moved up to help us. And so about 3 months before we were going to launch our church, I had a routine checkup at my cancer doctor, and I got a phone call the next day, and my cancer doctor said, "Steve, I got bad news. Cancer has come back in one of your lymph nodes, and you're going to have to go through chemotherapy." And so a month before we launched our church, I started chemotherapy, and it was a rough time. Looking back, it was not the wisest thing to launch a church while you're on chemo, and I was hospitalized several times and lots of life-threatening complications. And somehow, by the grace of God, I was able to drag myself to church on Sunday and preach, and then drag myself back home and crash for the week. It was
wow.
And
man.
so by God's grace, I'm cancer-free and been cancer-free for 6 years now. Thank God, or almost 6 years, and the church is still alive and well, and it survived. And I mean, it's still so difficult to plant a church in New York City. You know, it's a secular city. It's not. Yeah, it's just not easy to get any sort of momentum. It's just church life, and Christianity as a whole is just not part of the culture here the same way it is in some of the areas in the South and things like that. And so it's just a grind, and then it's so expensive to live in New York City. So trying to constantly ask God for the provision and all of those things to be able to just simply live is just, and on top of that, having a family, it's just a lot. But we've seen God do so much in the last 6 years at the Grace Place, and And just you're a testimony of the fruit of Grace Place. When you came to Grace Place, you were church hurt. You had gone through so much, and you came a wounded, just a wounded person, and God used our church community. I won't take all the credit. Yeah. I mean, we had an instant connection, and we've met, but there's been lots of people in our church that you've built community with that's helped restore trust in church, because you've had some interesting experiences in the church as well. And so just to see your growth, and to see people like Jama and Tara and Raymond, and see what God has done through them, and to see what God has done through Martine and our youth group and all that. It's just crazy. God has done incredible things over the last 6 years.
Wow. Awesome. So what was your expectation when you and the wife, before you guys moved to the city? Like, what was your expectation? Like, God's going to do something amazing. We're not going to have any complications. Like, God's going to come through. He's got us. Like, was that like your mantra? Was that like your faith builder, that God was just going to, and I mean, and God, obviously God has, I don't want to jump the gun. I mean, we're doing good now, but like, what was your expectation prior to you coming to New York? Like, we got to grind.
I had some lofty expectations, to say the least, man. I thought God was going to give us a mega church, man. I thought we were going to have, I thought we were going to have hundreds right out the gate, and we're going to move into 1,000 within a few years. And boy, did I have a reality check, man. But I came here thinking that we were gonna open up the church and people were gonna just flood in. But I didn't realize the how hard the ground in New York City was. I didn't realize just the different church culture in New York City. That a big church in New York City is like 300 people. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the South, if you don't launch with at least 300 people, you're doing something wrong. You know? And so it's just the metrics are different here in New York City. And so I had to learn that. And so I definitely, the expectations were definitely not met. And I had these lofty dreams that just were not realistic.
Yeah, so talking about church hurt. I was hurt, man. Because I was going to Hillsong for 4 years, and then I linked up with a young brother in the Lord. Linked up with him, and that didn't really go so well. And then I remember it was Pastor E. He came to NYSUM one summer, and I was just telling him a little bit about my life, my background, what I do. And he was like, you should definitely come to our church because I'm going to be speaking.
Even before that, we have a mutual
friend
named
Oh,
John
God.
Coolish that we got to shout out. What's up, John?
What's
I hope
up,
you're
John?
This. He was actually telling you about the church before, right?
Correct. Thank you for, definitely. So John, he would always come to NYSUM. Yo, you've got to check out my pastor. And my mindset was, man, a church plant? Really? I don't know. But he just kept on telling me, you got to come. You got to go. You got to check out my pastor. You'll click with him. I'm like, all right, I'll go. But, I was working. I was still going to Hillsong. I was still trying to see what was going on with me and this other individual that I wanted to, be a part of his church. And all that didn't work out. And that's when Pastor E came that summer. I forgot. I'm not good with you in dates, Pastor.
Yeah,
but
I
forgot what.
The summer of 2017?
I think so. I think it was the summer 2017. And he was actually staying here at NYSUM. It was Pastor E, my ex-girlfriend. Sorry,
by
Joy.
The way, Pastor E was the director of our Bible school as well.
Correct.
So this is all bringing it back.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, full circle.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so he was like, well, we're down here. I'm speaking. Come through. I'm like, oh, all right. Because, John was telling me about the church. And then I would see ads pop up. No, not ads. It was
Facebook
just
ads?
face. Yeah, yeah.
Or
You
maybe
guys
posts?
did posts, right?
Okay.
I'm like, okay, all right. So when I came to church, like you were very welcoming. Your wife was very welcoming. I'm like, okay, oh, it's cool. And Pastor E had a very good message. All I knew, or all I know, is we met, we exchanged phone numbers. Maybe like 2 weeks later, we were having a conversation, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
I came in that following Sunday. I took photos, and I've been with
Already?
you. Yeah.
Because one thing I do remember was you came to the church at.
I lied. Nope. You're right. Sorry, Pastor.
Yeah.
I told you I need some space. I need some
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, you wanted to take things slow.
I want to take things slow. I'll get back to you. But Pastor, I did that for two or 3 weeks. I liked your messages. I liked our connection. And I was like, Pastor, how can I be able to get involved?
And I do remember, like, you and another young man started attending the church at the same time.
Right.
And then I met with him and met with you around the same time. And he told me, anything you need, Pastor, I'm here. I'm all in. And you met with me and said, hey, I'm coming out of a difficult situation. I've got some church hurt. I want to take things slow, and I just want to check things out.
Right.
And I remember thinking, dang it, man, this guy's all in. Christian is wanting to take his time. I don't know about Christian. And I think my wife said, I think I might be wrong, but I think she told me Christian's going to be with you long term. And I was like, he just said he wants to take his time. He's probably never coming back. He's like, no, you watch. And that's what ended up happening. You took your time, but you were checking things out. And then once you felt comfortable and felt like this was the place for you, you went all in and you were like, I'm here, whatever you need.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your honesty, because you don't know how many times I've had someone say, I'm with you, Pastor, and then like the next week they're gone and I never see them. I mean, it happens all the time.
All the time.
So I do really appreciate you taking your time and being honest.
Of course, Pastor. Yeah, no, because I mean, we connected. Shout out to Ticho and Michelle and John. Like, I really just felt at home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? Why not? Just serve. And that's what I've been doing. Just serving. I mean, not at this season and not this moment, but I just been enjoying serving you in the church, in the body of Christ, and it's been good. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how I remember. I remember that we met, we had coffee, Gregory's Coffee, I think it was. Forgot the exact location. It was somewhere in Manhattan, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, I shared with you my heart, my church hurt. We talked about Hillsong, and I don't know if I actually be my mentor. I just said, can you just help me?
Yeah, well, I think this is what I appreciate about you, Christian, that you pursued a relationship with me. You pursued a mentoring with me. You reached out to me and asked me if you could meet. And then I have a family, so it's not as easy as for me to get around and my schedule and all that. And so you met me in my neighborhood. You lived here in Astoria, but you would meet me regularly in Hamilton Heights, where I lived at the time. And then you would come with a list of questions and things you wanted to talk about. And so that is textbook how you develop a relationship with a mentor. And most people do not do that. Yeah. And that's why most people don't have good mentoring relationships. So I do appreciate how you did that, and that's why I invested so much time into you, because you made it worth it because of the steps that you took.
Appreciate that, Pastor.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, for sure. Now, I mean, I really do think that, and I didn't add this in the text that I texted you a couple days ago, but it's like, I think that I am now reaping getting married, bonuses, just different things in my life, physically and spiritually, because I listened to you. Like I submitted, to, what you said over my life, your prayers, your wife's prayers, and just really, serving the church. And that's why I felt like I needed to text you, because I'm like, like I wouldn't be in this season of my life if it hadn't been, for the time that you have sacrificed for me. So I thank you for that, man, because, it's very hard to find a pastor. I mean, you got a lot going on. You got 3 children. You got a wife. You got a nonprofit. Got to prepare sermons. Sometimes you're traveling. So it's awesome. It's an awesome thing. It's a God thing, because I think that the Bible says that the steps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord. And I think that, God is ordering my steps, when you came into my life. And so it's awesome. I love how, our relationship has just flourished and blossomed into something so cool and dope. So appreciate you, Pastor.
Absolutely. Appreciate you too.
Yeah, man. So I want to talk about do I want to be funny? No. Let's I want to talk about the word of the year, and then I'll talk about church stories. But I want to talk about the word of the year. Because every year, you in the church, you ask us to do something.
That's so fun, right?
Fasting, and but it's good, because you said that, and I quote from you that when you fast, you can really just hear the voice of the Lord, and it kind of just sets a tone and a mood for your year. And I've been doing that, and I mean, I think it's been going great, but I think that the word, I mean, now you've always had great words of the year, but I think this year it's fear not. And I think it's crazy, because it's like when you spoke that message, every Facebook post, every Instagram post, every story, every pastor's talking about fear. And I think it's appropriate, because I mean, we just came through a pandemic. So many things are uncertain. And when there's uncertainty, there's a level of fear. And so I think this year with your word, it was so on point, because some of us, well, the majority of us, we are in a state of fear. Raising our children, trying to be in a healthy relationship or marriage. Like, there's all levels of fear. If am I going to be a good husband one day? Am I going to be a good father? Or just trying to leave my job well. It's like there's so many levels to fear. And so when you spoke that Sunday, for the word of the year, I'm like, this just hits different, because all of us go through a level of fear. But just the way that you brought it out, I was like, yeah. And I don't know if you want to share, but you also had dreams.
Yeah. So
concerning it. So
yeah, I'd been praying for a while about the word of the year. I started in November, December of 2022 about what a word, a phrase, a scripture, something, a North Star for the next year. And so we ended up going to Kansas City to visit my parents for Christmas. And so we were there for about 10 days. And so I at that point, I knew the word for this year for my family, for me personally, and for our church was fear not, from the scripture, Isaiah 40, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. And so like back to back, I had dreams, 3 dreams, and they all had to do with death, and they were all fearful dreams. One was like a plane crash. Another one was just someone dying, and so I knew after I had those dreams that the enemy was attacking me through my dreams, because this was legitimately a word that God wanted to really cement in our lives, in my life, through my ministry, through our church, the people in our congregation, because man, and I feel like this word resonated so much with people because, man, everybody struggles with fear. Everybody struggles with anxiety. There's people that deal with panic attacks. There's people that are paralyzed with fear. Yet that is not what God speaks over us. That is not God's will for our lives. It is to walk in confidence and authority and to fear not, because our God is bigger than our most fearful fears. And so, and then just in our lives personally and with my family, we just have so many things right now that are uncertain, that are fearful right now because of just different things happening in our lives. And so I just felt like that's really a word that we need to stand on. And the thing about God is that even though he gives you a prophetic word, doesn't mean that just because he said fear not doesn't mean you're not going to have scary, fearful circumstances.
Right.
Because we've continued to have very difficult, challenging circumstances in our lives, yet I've had to remind myself of the word, and I've had to remind myself to trust God and to fear not, because he is ultimately in control. He's sovereign, and he is going to work all things for my good. But yeah, I mean, I think that's really why that resonated with so many people, because so many people like you said, we just came out of a pandemic. There's so many things uncertain. Our political world is uncertain. There's so much craziness happening in our world. Trying to raise our children in a culture that's trying to over-sexualize them and talk about so many unbiblical, ungodly things. And there's just so much to fear. And so I think it's so important that we do hold on to those scriptures that tell us to fear not, because it is the most repeated command in Scripture, to fear not or be not afraid, for a reason. Right,
exactly. Because you mentioned that it was listed 365 days.
365 times, one for every day.
Times. And I'm like, wow.
That's crazy, right?
Real crazy. Wow.
Yeah. God knows what he's doing.
For sure. No, definitely. If you want to share, if you want to be vulnerable, like, what's one fear for you personally? Like, what's one fear that you are going through right now?
Yeah. I think, I think one of the fears that I have personally is, are my kids going to serve the Lord when they become adults? Are they going to love Jesus? Are they going to love the church? Are they going to be committed? Because when, God called me and my wife to New York City, the kids had no choice. We drug them along with us. Right. And so we took them away from their grandparents. My wife's parents live, in Texas. We actually lived a block away from them. Right. We took them away from their cousins and a church family there that they were loved and things like that. And so I just want to make sure that while we are on the front lines doing ministry and doing the work of the Lord, that we don't lose our kids. And so I think, and now my son is 12. He's starting to go to youth group now, and so he's becoming, he's about to be a teenager, and so those are crucial years. I heard a pastor that I met with a few weeks ago. He said he's a little bit further along with his kids than I am, and he said, from when they're born to 12, you are their hero. Your parents are their hero, but from 13 on, their friends become their most influential voice in their lives. And so Boston's about to hit that phase. And so I just hope and pray that I've invested enough and planted enough seeds in him that he won't stray away, and that he'll choose the right friends and the right relationships and all of those things. So that's just one of the many fears that I'm facing personally.
Yeah. Thank you for raising normal children.
We try, man. We try.
Because, Pastor, I'm not going to name no names. Yo.
I don't think we could tell those stories. Oh, man. I'm thinking of one particular thing that happened to you.
Yeah. I ain't finna say no names, but man, because I honestly, like, I even forget that they're even your kids because they're normal. I joke with them. I have intelligent conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, Boston's like Stephen A. Smith.
I get that a lot.
He's
about
giving me
him.
all
People
stats
say
and
that all
everything.
the
I'm like,
time.
man,
Yeah,
that's
he should
crazy.
be on First Take.
For sure. But yeah, but no, but I guess, I mean, well, a few things. It's like, number one, it's like you and your wife love the Lord.
Yeah.
And you put them first.
Yeah.
And, and you guys are just real humble and chill people. So, I mean, I get it. Like, I understand that, yes, it's the environment. But even if there is a saved married couple, you don't know how your kids will turn out.
It's true. It's true.
But no, but I mean, but that's when, like you said, you have to pray and just leave it up to the Holy Spirit. And pretty much, like you said, those seeds that you planted into your children, pray that they would, grow and they'll learn from you and your wife. So no, totally understandable. Totally get it. Man, but no, like I think, Pastor, for me, one of my fears is the same as yours. Like I didn't have a father growing up, so at like 9 or 10 years old, I know I was a strange child, but I thought this idea of, well, I know how it is to not have a father, but I pray that I'll be able to get married to someone and I can be a dad or a father that, my father wasn't, and so hopefully and prayerfully that will come soon,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that has always been a fear of mine because I've never really seen, well, besides you and a few others from church, I haven't really seen that modeled or that example. And so, that has always been a fear of mine. Just, I want to be, a good father. I'm praying that I'll be a good husband. And, but, I, like you said, like you mentioned, in the scripture, Isaiah 40, that, do not fear, for the Lord God is with you. So if he's with you, I mean, yes, you're going to, have challenges. You're going to have obstacles, but he's going to be with you through it all. You know what I'm saying? So,
that's right.
So yeah, definitely. All right, Pastor. So, man, I have some stories. I don't want to talk about nobody, but I don't know why it's our church, but we've had some odd things happen in our church.
Yes, we have.
And I hope that no one follows me. But because she doesn't go to our church anymore, so I'm a mention this one. I remember when our church was an animal church. Back on the Upper West Side.
Yeah. Yeah, dog church.
Dog church.
Oh man, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Now I really forgot her name, but there was literally a woman.
But I'm not going to mention it.
There was a woman that came to our church, Pastor, every Sunday, and she would bring her dog
without a leash.
Without a leash.
Just let that dog go running around like it was one of the members of our congregation. You remember that one time she let the dog loose and it was like in the middle of the worship team when they were trying to start?
Yes.
Yeah. It was, that was an interesting time. But at the time, we couldn't get hardly anybody in. And so It was like,
Wow.
I'll count the dog as part of the attendance as well. We couldn't, we were just struggling. So, yeah, that was tough. And we finally had to tell her, and it hurt her feelings that, we don't mind bringing the dog, but the dog needs to be on a leash because it's just going in and out of the chords and guitar and all that stuff.
Right, man.
I don't know if we did 30 seconds of kindness there, but it was like greeting people. And it was an interesting time.
Man. And then, yes, and I'm a let you share this story. I wish your wife was here.
I know, because she
really
experienced it. Yeah.
Right. But, so, over the course of my journey at the Grace Place, I have gone through, a few ladies. Now, when I mean by gone through, I mean date. I don't want y'all to think anything crazy, but there was a particular woman that I met. Man, I think she was on the west side, not west side, west coast
side of the country.
West side of the country, Pastor. And so, to make a long story short, I ghosted her because I said, this ain't gonna really work. I'm not really feeling her like that. I'm not going to waste our time. And so, but I blocked her. And I'm thinking to myself, well, because the plan was she was wanting to come to New York to visit me, to come to the church. I already told her where the church was. I done gave the address and everything. How dumb.
Oh, man.
And so I cut ties with her. I block her. But Pastor, here's the funny thing about it, though. It's like I thought about it twice before the actual story happened. I'm like, she's not going to still come up to New York and visit you, right? Nah, she ain't going to do that. But I kid you not. It was a Sunday morning. I think it was in December. And I was actually over there looking at the mirror, and I was brushing my teeth, and I don't know, thought just hit me. What if you see this chick today in church? Nah, brushing my teeth. Pastor, I get to Harlem, I get to our church, doing my thing, because I think I was doing announcements.
Oh, okay, announcements, yeah.
I was doing announcements, but even before I did announcements, it was 4 to 5 minutes before we did our opening song or whatever. And so, as I'm coming down the whole alleyway, I look and I see, because she's always wearing these big pointy hats. And when I saw that big pointy hat, I'm like, oh, Lord, everything in me. It's like, I gotta get out of here. So I got out and I called my friend. I was like, oh my gosh, the girl that I blocked is here at my church right now.
Was this before or after service that you?
No, this was before.
Okay, yeah.
So when I saw her, I'm like, oh no, she's here. So I went outside. I called my friend. And I'm like, well, I'm here. So I gotta serve. I gotta do announcements. And so when I did announcements, I was like, yeah. And I pretended that she was not even there.
Oh my God.
But your wife, see, this is why I wish your wife was here, because she'd be like, no, Christian, this.
Oh, for sure. For sure. You should just bring her on just to tell this story.
Because this, man, yeah. But, so I had, I don't want to say a stalker, but I had a woman that came all the way from the West Coast.
Seattle, right?
She was from Seattle. So she lived in Seattle, and then she had some type of meeting in Atlanta. So the plan was she was going to handle her business in Atlanta, come and see me. But I'm like, I blocked this chick. She ain't finna come and see me. Boy, was I wrong. She was right in the middle of our church service. Lord have mercy. And I knew then, I'm like, okay, no. And then I blocked her from our Grace Place
Oh my gosh.
She ain't finna see nothing. She ain't finna see nothing. But Pastor, I mean, those are the only two that I feel comfortable of saying on this podcast.
Well, a little bit more to that story. When Priscilla, did she talk to her before service?
It was after.
Okay, so
that's when I went and I hid in the bathroom.
Okay, so this woman comes to our church, and we had no idea when she got there she had any connection to anybody in our church. We just thought she was a first-time guest. So after church, my wife and I always go out to the lobby of the church to greet everybody. And so we saw her, and we said, "Hey, welcome to the church. We're so glad you're here. How'd you hear about us? Where are you from?" And she told my wife, she's from Seattle. She was like, "Oh, Seattle? Are you just visiting the city?" And she was like, "No, I'm actually visiting someone." And she said, "Who are you visiting?" And she said, "Someone in this church." And my wife was like, "Well, who?" And she was like, "Well, I don't want to say." And she was like, "What? Why?" Because my wife had no idea. And she was like, "Well, I don't want to like disparage his reputation." She was like, "Well, why? And what's happening?" And she was like, "Well, we were supposed to be dating, and I was supposed to be here seeing him, but he's acting like he doesn't even know me. And so I needed you or something after service." And so I was like asking everybody, "Where's Christian? Christian's not here." And he's nowhere to be found. And Christian always helps with tear down. And if I ever need anything, he's always there. But Christian's just MIA. And we still hadn't made the connection. So my wife was like, "Okay, I'm going to start naming people from the church, and you just say yes if it's him." And so she started naming, and we didn't have a lot of people in the church, so she just started naming people. And she was like, I'm not going to say. And somehow, how did we find you? Or did you finally come out? Pulled me off to the side and told me what was going on. And I was like, "Christian, what? This woman came all the way from Seattle to see you, and you didn't even acknowledge her?" And then you told me that I blocked her. We broke it off, and I'm kind of scared because she's here in New York, and I don't want to see her, and I'm a little bit afraid of what she's gonna do to me. Man. Like, I don't want her to know she knew where you lived too, right? Or no?
No.
Okay, at least she didn't know where.
Oh my God!
You were afraid that she was going to find out, though. So
right,
that was a little bit of a scary moment for you, even though it was very funny and very out there and wild.
But it was, Pastor. It was, and then so that's pretty much what happened. And so I came out of hiding in the bathroom, and Priscilla says, "You come here." I said, "Yeah, what's up? What's up, Pastor Priscilla?" Like, "Hey, She pulls up the picture.
Oh my God.
Do you know this person?
Had she left by then? Is that what happened?
Yeah, she was gone. She was gone. And I said, yes, Pastor. Yes, Pastor. This is blah, blah, blah. And like, it was you.
So she still didn't tell her. That's how she found out. Wow. Mm-hmm. She kept her lips zipped. She
really did, yeah.
Even though you had ghosted her, she still wasn't going to throw you under the bus.
But she did say that you preach good. You know, that you had a good sermon.
We had an extra person there for church. That's a preacher's dream to have more people at church. So.
At church, man. No, yeah. For sure. Now, do you have any stories that come to your mind as far as you or me or the church or...
I mean, there are stories, but I can't tell on the podcast because it would be talking about people that could potentially see it or something like that. But yeah, now that we're talking about these, I have so many stories coming to my mind. You know, I mean, we have had some odd things happen in our church. Like we've had a guy come before that he sat down in his seat at church and then started asking people for money right then and there in the middle of church service. And so we had to go to him and say, hey, man, we can buy you something to eat or whatever, but we can't have you asking church members for money. But that's part of having a diverse church, a socioeconomically diverse church. So we have people that have professional jobs and we have people that don't have homes and are struggling. And so we have all sorts of people. So we have had people walk into the bathroom and there's someone, bathing completely naked in the bathroom, bathing in the sink of the school that we meet at. So it's just a part of the church we have.
Right.
It's not easy, but that's the people God has brought to us. So
Ooh-wee. I wanted to get your thoughts on Hillsong, Carl Lentz, Brian Houston. Yeah, like the scandal, everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think celebrity church culture is really difficult because I don't think God intended for pastors and preachers to be celebrities. I think He's called us to preach the word. I think He's called us to disciple people, and I think He's called us to walk in humility. And we live in a culture where we want to elevate people. We elevate actors and musicians and singers and athletes, and we do the same thing with preachers. And so I think, I don't know Carl Lentz at all. I've never met him or anything like that, so I don't know his heart. But it seemed like, from my vantage point, I might be completely wrong, and I'm good, but just my opinion, it felt like maybe some of the celebrity and some of the influence and some of the platform had gotten to his head, and it was more about the people he knew. It was more about his image. It was more about that, keeping that celebrity culture, than it was about ministry. Like I said, I don't know him. I never met him, so this is just from what I observe from afar. And I think maybe, at some point his relationship with Jesus got off track, and he started making some bad choices and decisions, and then it all came out, and it all came crashing. And the thing is that, when the same people that build you up will be the people that tear you down, and so those people that looked at Carl as a celebrity once he was out of the limelight, I don't think he has those people in his life anymore. I mean, and so I think celebrity culture can be so fickle. As fast as you rise up is as fast as you can be torn down when something happens. And so I think, I think, like, and then I don't know, like, it just seems like Hillsong as a whole, they were like the biggest thing in church culture for so long. And then little things started coming out about the dominoes started falling with Carl Lentz, and then stuff started coming out about Brian Houston and all of those things. And I think just little by little, their reputation just got so tarnished, and different stories and articles and things came out about them. And I think it just really, hurt their witness to the world. It's sad. I love Hillsong music, and I love the what God did through them throughout the world. And it's just sad to see what has happened to, what happened with Brian and what happened with Carl and all those things. And so I just think that what I learned from it is don't try to chase celebrity or fame or popularity. Just pursue Jesus and serve the people that God has brought before you, and be who God made you. Don't try to be someone else. Don't try to preach like someone else. Don't try to be put on someone else's armor, so to speak, like Saul had David put on his armor, but it wasn't what he was used to. Don't try to do that. Be comfortable in your own skin and be who God has called you to be. And God has not called you to be anybody else. He's called you to be faithful to what he called you to. And so I think that's what I learned from that whole situation. But it's deeply sad and just heartbreaking for sure. And I think it's probably even a little bit more personal to you, because you actually went to Hillsong for 4 years, and you met Carl, and you actually went to their church before he blew up big time. So he's a little more accessible, I guess, when you were there. A little bit,
right?
I mean, you were at least able to get a picture with him, right, or something like that. So.
Yeah. And then that was it, Pastor. Is it a fear of yours to be someone like a Mike Todd, Carl Lentz? Let me rephrase it like this. When you become a celebrity pastor, do you think that you could handle it?
Well, so I know you rephrased the question, but I just don't. I don't think that's. I don't think that's what God has for me. I don't think I'm as I don't think I'm as talented as those guys.
But
So
what if, hypothetically?
yeah, I mean, I think if I was I think it was just if I was pursuing that platform and that celebrity and that fame,
Right.
I absolutely don't think I would have what it takes to handle it. I think hopefully if God decided to give me a bigger platform or whatever, that that He's humbled me enough in my life, and I've seen enough things in my life, and I've had enough disappointments and discouragements in my life that I would never try to take the credit for the platform God gave me, and I would just be grateful for the increase that God gave me, and that I would give Him all the glory and the honor. But
Right.
you never know until you're in that place, because power can get to your head, popularity can get to your head, influence can get to your head. And so I hope that I have enough character to be able to, the further God takes me, the more humility I have, and the more I look to Him and not to me. Because I think that's what happens with some of these guys. They start
Yep.
thinking it's because of me, it's
Yep.
because of my talent, it's because of my ability, it's because of my personality.
Right.
And that's when we get in
That's when we
trouble,
get in trouble.
big time. And so hopefully I would never, hopefully I would be able to stay humble if God ever blessed me with a larger platform.
Yeah. If you were best friends with Carl Lentz, what would you say to him in this season of his life?
Now, or like whenever, like around the time everything was happening?
Around the time everything was happening.
Yeah, I think I would tell him, stop, like, and again, I just feel like I'm not even qualified to make these statements, but you're asking the question.
Yeah, I'm
So
asking the question. Yeah,
I think I would say, dude, stop posting pictures of all these celebrities on Instagram, and just go serve the average Joe in your church, and just be with your church people, because shepherds smell like their sheep. So stop trying to be famous, man, and just go back to why you were called to the ministry in the first place. Go back to your first love, and love your wife and love your kids, and invest in them, and dude, just slow down a little bit. I think that's what I would tell him. Again, that's from seeing things from afar. I don't know what his life was like, is like, what he was doing and not doing. Obviously, there was something going on for him to have an affair and things like that. But
right.
But yeah, I think that's what I would tell him. Yeah.
Okay. Church as a whole, where do you see the church progressing or going to? I mean, I know that you mentioned celebrity pastors and stuff like that, Hillsong, Bethel. No shots being thrown at them. But, like, where do you see the church going as a whole? Do you see more revival happening, like the whole Ashbury thing? Yeah. What's your take on that?
I think the church as a whole, I think we're going to go away from the whole mega church, celebrity church model. And I think because of how much the church's reputation has been tarnished in the media, and how much because we live in a 24/7 news cycle, social media, you hear about everything, about everybody, about people from Maverick City Music, you hear about celebrity preachers and what they're doing. You have Instagram handles like Preachers and Sneakers and Prophets and Watches that are just calling out all of these preachers. And so I think where the church needs to head is more authentic, genuine relationships with people, where we're not in the limelight for the expensive clothes we have and jewelry, but but people hear about us because of the way we're serving the poor and the way we're serving the marginalized, and we're building relationships with the people in our church, and we're discipling people, and we're not focused on, when I came to the city, I thought we were going to have a mega church, but that shouldn't be my goal. My goal should be serving and discipling and mentoring and pouring into the people that God has before me. And as God expands my influence and territory and more people come, that vision never leaves me, to disciple people and mentor people and to help empower people to walk in their gifts. my focus never goes to bigger stages and bigger people, but it stays on the people that God has for me. And as He expands my influence and platform, that I would just keep focused on the people and not my own brand. I think we're going away from, I don't know if we're going away from it, but I think we should go away from preachers trying to build their own social media brand to, man, just preach the gospel, love people, and help people flourish in their gifts and all of those things.
Couldn't have said it better. That's good. Now that's true, authentic. Yeah, I agree. I think that people they're seeing the real. That it's not about. I do believe that you got to be swagged up, looking good, fresh and clean. But like you said, you got to be focused on Jesus, His people, His sheep, And so, like you said, I like that. Smell like your sheep.
Yep.
And so, just getting back to the main thing, and the main thing is loving God, loving others, and serving. So, no, 100%. I totally agree, for sure. Give me, because I know that you are. Well, I actually want to ask you this too. I don't know if you watched the Academy Awards or the Oscars. Do you know a woman by the name of Angela Bassett?
Yeah. I didn't watch it, but
you heard about it. How do you feel about that?
What exactly? I didn't. I mean, I heard she said she was upset that she didn't get picked for the Oscar.
Supporting actress, yeah, because she's been in a lot of movies, and so apparently Jamie Lee Curtis won that same. She won supporting actress, and I forgot what movie it was called, but when Jamie Lee Curtis, when she got up to go get the award. Angela Bassett, she didn't, applaud her or nothing. She just was like, that should have gone to me. Just want to know, if you, I didn't know if you watched it or if you know anything about it.
I didn't see it. I did hear some, but I didn't even research it, or I never even read anything on it. I just saw snippets of stuff. But I mean, I think there's a long history there with the Oscars of not having a sufficient minority. Minority representation. And so, and then the whole Hollywood thing and the way movies get picked for Oscars and the type of the people they get picked for winning the Oscars. I don't even trust that process. So, I think I mean, I think there's so many different things wrong with Hollywood and the Oscars and that elitist mentality. I think several years ago, Ricky Gervais, the comedian, he went off on everybody in the Oscars and then just called everything out. And it just seems, I agree with everything he said. So it doesn't surprise me that this happened, and it doesn't surprise me that Angela Bassett responded that way either. I mean, last year, Will Smith slapped Chris Rock and didn't get kicked out of the Oscars, and then received an Oscar and was got a standing ovation after he assaulted a man, and so I think there's so many things wrong with all that whole thing, Hollywood, Oscars, movies in general. There's just so much wrong with it. And people get up there and just lecture the rest of the American people on how to live their lives and all that, and I just think as bad of a reputation the church has, Hollywood has maybe an even worse reputation than the church. So,
no, I hear that, Pastor. Yeah, I mean, like you said, they don't really give much attention on the minorities. Like, I heard that there were some Chinese people that, won some awards, and that's cool for them. But as far as Indians, blacks, Hispanics, I haven't seen any love shown to us. So hopefully, in the future, we can be able to change the narrative of that. I just had a thought I want to get your take on this. The whole John Morant situation. How do you people? I don't know. I think that you should just give John Morant John Morant some grace. But I think that I don't know. It's like every news reporter, analyst, they're going in on him. So how do you? Any thoughts on that?
I think so. My son, Boston,
Right.
his favorite player is John Morant. He loves John Morant, and so
Oh wow.
I was saddened when I heard about some of the decisions that he's making, and I think when you have supreme talent in any area, it's going to bring on money, it's going to bring on influence, it's going to bring on power, it's going to bring on perks that the normal person doesn't have. But it also takes, kind of like what we talked about with the celebrity culture, or what would I do if I ever got that platform.
Right.
You also have to have you have to steward it well, and you have to be responsible. The responsibility that you have goes up. And so Ja, man, he can't be hanging around the same people that he hung around with when he was a kid, that he hangs around with now, because his influence is different and his money's different, and now he's being endorsed by companies, and kids look up to him, so he's on a whole different level. And so John Morant can't mess with the same stuff that he used to mess with, because so much is at stake, and he's got so much potential ahead of him. He's a basketball star, and he's got so much athletic ability, and he's marketable, and all of these things. And if he's not careful, and if he doesn't choose his friends wisely, and if he doesn't make better choices, he's going to lose all of that. The money, he's going to lose the influence, he's going to lose the endorsements, he's going to lose his basketball career. And so I think hopefully this is a wake-up call for him. Hopefully he'll make, and other athletes have done it. Michael Vick changed, and lots of athletes have changed their image after they got in trouble initially. And so hopefully, John Morant's young. I think he's like 22, 23.
23,
so,
yeah.
So he's got, he's young. When I was a 22, 23-year-old, I mean, I was a Christian, but I could imagine, when you have all that money thrown at you, fame thrown at you, power, that's hard when you're a 22-year-old kid. So I hopefully this really gets John Morant's attention, and he chooses to live differently, because he's got so much potential ahead of him.
No, for sure, definitely. And going back to what you said, everything that you said made sense, and I agree. But when you said your son looks up to him,
it's his favorite player.
It shows that, oh, well, Dad, I can go and live a thugged out life.
It's cool to have guns.
It's guns, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. I just don't think that. Well, maybe he does. I don't know. Like you say, I don't know him like that. But it's like you have to think that your level of influence, it goes up, man.
Yeah.
You're getting millions of dollars. You are a star athlete, like you said, and so you have to carry yourself in a new way. Really?
Absolutely. I forget which one, but one of his major endorsements just dropped him.
Right, I just heard.
But that's money you're losing because of dumb decisions you're making. So yeah, again, hopefully he wakes up.
For sure. No, definitely. To close this pod, Pastor, I'm gonna have you pray. But before you pray, I want you to give me maybe like your top 3 to 5 books that you've read over the last, I don't know, 16, 17 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can think of them.
I'm one of my favorite books is by John Mark Comer, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Yes.
That's
okay.
an excellent
I got
book.
that one. Yeah.
Highly recommend that book. I'm trying to think. I read so much.
Man.
I'm trying to think of the books that have kind of really, really stood out. The Celebration of Discipline by Richard Foster. He talks about spiritual disciplines in there. That's an excellent book. I think The 6 Types of Working Genius. I just read that book. That's a leadership book by Patrick Lencioni.
Wow, okay.
That's a really good book. Highly recommend that. Man, I let me actually let me.
Yeah.
I have lists of books that I've read on my.
Oh,
on
that's
my
right.
notes
Yeah,
here.
you.
So let me look through that, and because this
No.
is so important. Books are very, very important.
For sure. No.
So
Definitely. Now, do you also? I mean, does it matter to you if you read like a secular author? Does it always have to be
no,
Christian?
I don't I don't personally think it needs to be, but my preference, I'm so into like theology and spiritual
Right.
formation or leadership that I kind of stick to that. But no, I think it's actually good to read outside of that. I think it's good to read different genres. I think it helps your creativity to read fiction books and things. I don't do it very often, but I think it would help.
Right.
It's just not that interesting to me. Like my kids, they've read like these huge novels, like hundreds and hundreds of pages of these action fantasy books. I'm just not into it.
Man.
But they go into another world, and I think it's great. I think it's awesome. But
Wow.
this book, Misreading Scripture with Individualist Eyes, is a really good. It's a really good book. How this book talks about how we read the Bible through the lens of our American individualism, where the people that lived in the time of the Bible and that wrote the Bible, they wrote it from a collectivist, more of a community group, because that's the culture they were in. And sometimes we misinterpret Scripture because we're viewing it through the lens of all we know. And so that's a really excellent book to see the Bible through the eyes of the actual authors and the culture they were in and all that. So yeah, that's about 4 books that I would definitely recommend.
Okay. All right. Any last words, Pastor, as we close?
I had fun doing this. We should do it
really
again.
good. Yeah.
I had a great time. It was, we talked about so many different things but I'm proud of you for stepping out and doing this. And I think you're going to make a huge impact with this. So keep going, keep doing it, and proud of you, and proud of what God's doing in your life and how He's using you, and how He's going to continue to use you.
Thank you, Pastor. That means a lot, man. Thank you. Can you pray us out?
Yeah. Father, I thank you for this time that we've had together. I thank you for my brother, Christian. I thank you, Lord, that he's such a great man of God. He's a man of faith. He's a risk taker. You've put so many things in his heart. You've given him so much talent and gifts, and I thank you that he's a good steward of those things. And God, I pray that you would increase and expand his influence, and God, use him in an even greater degree, Lord. And I pray that you would prepare his heart and prepare his mind and prepare him, Lord, for his upcoming marriage and the different responsibilities that he's going to take on. And Father, we just pray that you would use this time that we had together to speak to 1 or 2 people, and even if 1 or 2 people were blessed, this time was worth it, Lord. And God, I pray that you would use us for your glory. I pray for your blessing and provision over our lives. And we love you and honor you today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. That was episode 3 of Barr+Friends with my pastor, Pastor Stephen Paramala. Love y'all. Have a good one.